Every haunted place has a story with a dark past. This is Ghost Encounters Podcast. Due to the graphic and violent things discussed on this episode, listener discretion is advised. Welcome back, all you spooky people, to the 14th episode of the first season of Ghost Encounters Podcast. I am paranormal investigator Justin Torok.
I'm Eric Ledbetter, and I forgot what to say.
I'm Kayla Volash, and I'm back, bitches.
And I'm Jordan, the group scientist.
So all of us are back. The Fab Four is back. It's been a while since all of us were in the same room. We've all had things going on and schedules, but the
Can we
four
blame
of us
it on the holidays if it's March?
I don't think so.
Too late for that.
We can blame a little bit on the holidays, but you were on vacation twice. Eric was on vacation.
I bought a house and moved.
You bought a house and moved.
I bought a dog.
We've all had a lot of things going on, but all four of us are now back today. I am so excited. Since it was just St. Patrick's Day, we thought it would be a great idea for all of us to do our own research and bring you all our own piece of Ireland's haunted history or mysteries or urban legends to bring to the table. This is going to be a very exciting episode because we all don't know what each other are saying. We all have different pieces of information to give you. So I think we're going to start it off with Eric.
Great.
Eric, you did Leap Castle, right?
I did Leap Castle. And so Leap Castle, I knew nothing about. I didn't know it existed until Jordan told me that it existed in a text message yesterday. But it's really cool. So Leap Castle was built by the O'Bannons in around 1250 AD. It was then taken over and ruled by the O'Carrolls after that in the late 15th century. So it really started out in a bad way. There's just so many various accounts of murder and ghosts. It's a really cool place. So I'm going to start with that it was originally built on a piece of land where there is evidence that it was constructed on the same site as another ancient stone structure, perhaps ceremonial in nature, that the area has been occupied consistently since at least the Iron Age, which was 500 BC, and possibly since the Neolithic time. So when it was built, they found evidence of life prior to this, so just thousands of years, which is crazy. When the O'Carrolls occupied the property in around 1532, a lot of the family members died, but there was a fierce rivalry for the leadership to take over the castle, and a bitter fight for power turned brother against brother. What? Dun, dun, dun. One of the brothers was a priest, so he was holding mass for a group of his family and friends in what they now call the Bloody Chapel. His rival brother burst into the chapel, plunged his sword into him, and fatally wounded him. The butchered priest, right? The butchered priest fell across the altar and died right in front of all of those people, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And people now say they can smell burning rubber, they can smell burning flesh, so it's pretty crazy.
That's a distinct smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
dead
that's an
deer.
awful smell.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're like investigating haunted places, like you can sometimes smell a perfume or a musty smell from a cologne or something, but to smell burning flesh, that's a very distinct smell to come across. That's insane.
It's also gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
Like nobody wants, you can't get that smell out of your nose.
No.
I've been in houses where people have died and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. So a couple of weird things. During renovation of the castle in the 1900s, workers found an oubliette, I think it's called, oubliette, which is another word for a dungeon, behind the wall in the chapel. At the bottom of the shaft were many human skeletons that were impaled on wooden spikes. When it was cleaned out, they took 3 cartloads to remove all of the bones that they found.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
That sounds like some really good home decor.
Right, exactly.
That
They
is
could have
true.
repurposed that.
I will take it.
Of course you will. It's believed that the O'Carrolls would drop guests through some sort of trapdoor, and then they impaled on the spikes, which were 8 feet below.
Ow.
And they did find a pocket watch when they found that oubliette, dating back to the 1800s to show how recently that oubliette had been used. So it wasn't from the 1200s. It was really from pretty recent.
Dang.
Wow.
Crazy,
Can you
right?
imagine
Like,
falling on a spike from 8 feet up?
Can't.
I can't. And then you're just let there to bleed out and die.
Oh no, I've been impaled. like
like-
Olaf and Frozen.
But when you hear about this, you think of like Middle Ages, but you're saying as early as the 1800s.
1800s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not even.
And I mean, when you fall, you're not instantly dead.
No,
Most times, depending
no.
on how the spikes would hit you, you're not. You could just sit there for
Ooh,
hours.
it could have gone through an
Yeah.
eye.
Days, who knows?
Well, and also, look, think
It
of all
gave
the
me
bones
eye
that were there.
pain.
So they did it lots. They did it to a lot of people. So maybe you fell on top of somebody else too.
Break
Which
my
is pretty
skull a little
awful.
bit.
Yeah.
Human kebab.
Pretty creepy.
Bye.
So let me talk a little bit
Oh my God,
about.
my wine almost just came out my nose.
I'm so sorry.
A human kebab.
I'm not even stoned.
Delicious.
We're not very sensitive people.
This is an awful tragedy. We're making jokes.
Yeah, how dare you guys?
Terrible. Terrible.
So let me talk a little bit about the hauntings.
Yes.
Which let's get to the crux of what we really want to hear about. There's not a lot about the Red Lady. She's supposedly walking the halls holding a dagger. So people have seen her. I found a lot of information on 2 little girls, one named Emily and one named Charlotte. Emily is reported to run up and down the hallways. And what?
Just Emily and Charlotte are such like demonic children names.
Oh, yeah.
And like I'm really sorry to anyone who has a child named Emily or Charlotte, but like those are just typical like, oh, there were 2 haunted little girls in the hallway. Emily and Charlotte.
Yeah, Emily and
Yeah,
Charlotte, right?
yeah.
What do you want their names to be?
I think that's perfectly fitting.
Yeah, okay,
For
good.
a scary story.
Emily died after she fell from the battlements on the top of the castle's tower, and Charlotte can still be seen running around after her sister and calling her name. Another report that I read is Emily can be seen falling from the top of the castle and then disappearing right before she hits the ground.
Oh, wow.
Which is super crazy. Imagine seeing a child and then falling, and then you're like, where did she
I'm
go?
good. I'll pass on
I heard that tours see her fall.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like a group of people see her fall, and
Wow.
they can't
cool.
find her after.
And
Not
then
a
they,
fan.
yeah, gross. And then they see Charlotte dragging a dismembered leg
What the
around. So I don't know if it's Emily's leg from falling or somebody else's, but
Oh, jeez.
That's
yeah.
creepy.
Yeah. The castle is also allegedly haunted by what they call a sinister elemental spirit, or some people have called it an it. And really what it is something the size of a sheep with a human face that has black holes for eyes and the nose and giving off a smell of a rotting corpse. They believe it's Mildred Darby, who was one of the former wives of the owners of the house that lived there. They can also hear people snoring when nobody's in the room. So they'll hear, people that have their ghosts actually snoring. More specifically, they hear a snoring man. And it is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the world.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Hold on, a sheep with a human head?
A sheep, yeah. So it's about the size of a sheep with a human head, black holes for eyes, and a nose, and smells of a rotting corpse.
Well, she doesn't sound like a good time. She sounds kind of
No,
scary.
that's insane. For a human spirit to take the shape of a sheep is like really unheard of.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's terrifying to see.
I don't like it.
Well, it's also demonic-y, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's more
it's a little
demonic.
That's something
than...
Sid from Toy Story would create.
Yeah.
The toys. Yeah.
Yeah. But if anybody wants to visit Leap Castle, it's in Kildare, Ireland, right in the smack middle of Ireland.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. Kildare.
Great research.
Yeah,
Great
good job.
story.
Thanks, guys.
Kayla, you are up next.
All right. So my place that I chose is called the Dunlow Fort, in parentheses castle. And I was really drawn to this one mainly because there is a documentary currently in my Netflix watch list that I have not gotten to just yet, but I kind of spoiled the first episode for myself with this research. And I couldn't stop, so I kind of had to keep going. So Dunlow Castle was the site of a pretty famous murder recently. So Dunlow Castle, also known as Three Castle Head, was the backdrop for the documentary Sophie, A Murder in West Cork, which was a documentary on Netflix that was released about a year or two ago about this woman who was staying in her holiday home, is what they called it, her vacation home. right before Christmas, and she was getting ready to come back on Christmas, but she was murdered. And rumor has it by her murderer that she saw the ghost of the White Lady at the castle the day before she died. Now, it was obviously never confirmed, and we are taking that from the man who killed her and said, she saw the White Lady. She died. Like, because the rumor is, if you see the White Lady, you die that day. And she died the following day.
Irish people are really superstitious.
They are
like,
insanely
they believe in all of that kind of stuff.
But on to be fair, a lot of weird things happen.
Yeah,
yes.
You know, that's where these superstitions come from. A lot of weird things happen over and over again. You can't help but to wonder, like, for those skeptics out there, you might think, oh, it's just coincidence. But when these things keep happening, you can't deny it.
It can't all be coincidence. So the kind of backstory that goes into the Lady in White, or the Lady of the Lake, is that a heartbroken bride had thrown herself off the cliff top by the castle after she found out that her dad shot and killed her new husband. And she just couldn't take it anymore. It was their wedding day that he had killed them, or killed the husband. And she just could not take it anymore. So she jumped to her death on her wedding day. And people say that you can see her wandering around either in a white flowing dress or a very prominent wedding dress is what everyone sees. The skeptics out there do try to say it's something with the mist on the lake is how you end up seeing the woman in white.
If you're seeing an actual person floating on the lake within the mist, you're seeing the spirit of a person. You're not just seeing mist, as the skeptics would say.
Yeah,
you know?
That's why I said hogwash.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Like if you're seeing the outline and the shape of a person, and you see a person, you can tell that it's female.
And they're in a dress.
And they're in a dress, and the skeptics are going to say,
it's just mist
because
rising
the
off
light
of the
is
lake.
reflecting, the moonlight is reflecting off the lake into the mist. Like,
no, it's clearly a begrudged wife, or ex-wife, I guess.
Ooh.
Oh no.
There's also what they see is just what they call the Lady of the Lake, which is very similar, but it's more of just a women's kind of figure, not so much set on the whole white dress situation. And that one is typically seen with a lighthouse in the distance as well. But I just found this one personally really interesting because I'm big into murder and true crime. The fact that there was a true crime documentary that also kind of played into the topic of our podcast this week was super exciting, and now I think this has been bumped right up to the top of my watch list because I need to know more about the murder. But I did find it very, very interesting that the murderer to this day swears that she did see the woman in white the day before she died.
What happened with him? Is he in prison?
He is in prison for 25 years. He was sentenced in 2019. He beat her,
so this
beat
is
her
like
head
recent.
in. Yeah,
It's really recent.
really recent. Yep,
Wow.
he beat her head in. So he was sentenced to 25 years in 2019 after being tried in Absentia, which is somewhere in France. He was tried by the French court because they were from France, the woman who was murdered.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some other supernatural elements to the case that are mentioned. So one of the really spooky things that people notice when you go on a walking tour of the castle is that there is one wall in particular that goes directly into the ocean, and the wall just kind of disappears underneath the water.
Do they have any idea why?
No one knows.
Interesting.
Not so paranormal, but like, why is there a wall going into the water?
Right. I mean, I could see, like, if it's an ancient structure and there was something there, that over time, of course, the sea takes back some of the land. That's pretty strange. It just goes directly into the sea like that.
Yep. Yeah. So that's a big thing for people that go on tours, because a lot of people, you have to look at it from a certain angle to actually see it, because it's an area that you can't get to. So when you look at it from the sides, it looks completely normal. But if you're looking at it from down, you can see that the wall just gradually goes underwater.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is Dunlow Castle and the Lady in White and the Lady of the Lake.
That's really cool.
That's a good
Thank
one.
you
I
for
like that story.
Sounds
Very welcome.
moral of
Like
the
that.
story is don't fuck with an ex-wife.
Yeah.
pretty
Don't
much.
murder your daughter's husband.
So you said, like, Charlotte and Emily were very typical, like, spirit little girl names, but here we have the Lady of the Lake, which I know has been in hundreds of different TV shows and movies.
All the time.
And then we have the Lady in White. So we have very typical type of hauntings
Yes.
going on so far. Jordan, what did you research and what is the story?
So I looked at something that was more like of a legend because I'm big into like cryptozoology and stuff like that. So I found something about a witch.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's actually called Mountain of the Witch. The location, it's La Crue. It's kind of like a cemetery. They kind of think it's a cemetery. It was built like around 4000 BC, something like that. It's
really old.
Yeah, it's 5,000. It's over 5,000 years old. Wow. And this is really funny. I think this is really funny. They're called, like a pile of rocks is called a Karen over there. And I thought it was so funny.
Okay, it's not...
So when they were talking about it and all these
And
like
she is a bitch.
She is a
they were saying it, they kept saying Karens, and I'm like, Karens? Like, what is a Karen? So I had to Google it because I was like, I would have never thought that the rocks were Karen, like the structure was a Karen.
How do you spell
bitches.
their Karen?
It's Cairn.
Okay, Karen. That's how you spell Karen in Ireland, and it means
A pile of rocks.
a man-made pile of rocks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when she says Karen, that's what we're referring to. We're not referring to a blonde lady that's asking to speak to the manager.
a stacked haircut.
Yeah, but it's a really cool location apparently. Like you can look up images. It's just literally like, and inside of each place, it looks like somebody literally took like a spoon and like took out like circles. So inside you could see where the rocks were taken and put on the outside to make the location. It's a really cool spot. And it's also really cool, kind of like reminds you of Stonehenge, where they're like put in like up in a strategic way so that during the equinox the light shines right through.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So whoever heard of this had to be really smart.
Yeah. And it says during the spring and autumn equinox, you can see the rays enter the passageway and illuminate on the back.
That's really cool.
On the back. And it has like all those really cool like spiral and like weird Neolithic, like I don't know the word for it, but designs, carvings. It says that La Crue was used as a burial ground, ritual monuments, and places where gatherings took place. It says that people also celebrated their ancestors, gods, and nature there. There's also a huge chair that like they call the hag's chair, because I'm getting to that.
That's my chair.
Why it's like basically there's a legend there of a witch, so the story goes that to rule over Ireland, the hag, or witch, I like to say witch better, had to complete a feat of enormous strength. She had to leap from hill to hill with stones in her apron, and as she jumped from peak to peak, she dropped handfuls of stones. The stones became the Karens, and on her final jump to be mistress of the land, she broke her neck and was buried with the stones on the side of the hill.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an interesting story, and like people that go there, they say that they feel weird energy because there's actually water flowing underneath the hills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you know, they use water to make energy.
Correct.
So I feel like that would be another reason why they feel like it's kind of haunted there.
Yeah, I mean the story of a witch. I mean that's pretty cool. I mean the fact that this place exists and you can see all these man-made stone structures and they have this legend with it, I think is really cool.
Yeah. And there's also 32 recorded Karens spread over the 4 rolling hills.
32?
Yeah.
That's a lot of Karens.
Yeah. If you
Wow.
look, the one specific place where Karen T, which is the most popular one, is, there's like maybe like 4 on the one hill. Mm-hmm. And the one big one is the most popular because it's the highest. Where if you stand on top of it, you can see like 360 around.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And how big are these rocks?
They look like small hills because I read that too. I think.
Yeah,
it
says this one says the highest point is 276 above sea level, meters above sea level.
It almost looks like rolling hills. Like
They say that like when they describe it that it's on rolling hills, but it's a cool place. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah, well they celebrate the equinox there. Like they hold like a big festival.
Oh, that's cool.
And they don't care if it's snowing. They don't care if it's raining. They don't care if it's frosty. You're there to see
The
this.
fact that there's a chair.
Yeah,
Like
and
obviously this
apparently-
place was used for something.
Yeah, and apparently there's a cross in the middle of it, and if you sit there, apparently, like, legend has it that you can make a wish. So you have to make your one wish count when you sit on it.
I'm about to go to Ireland.
There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool story when I
That's
found
really
it.
cool. What else did you research?
Oh, I also researched a jail.
Ooh.
Do you like how they spell jail? They spell it Gaol.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I looked up Wicklow Jail, and it's recorded to be one of the top, 10 most haunted places in the world. It's kind of a sad story. Basically, they took anybody in, and they tried you like an 8-year-old would be tried the same way as a 40-year-old.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it's kind of a sad place, and many of the people that were in prison there were like for petty crimes, like stealing a potato.
Potatoes.
Throw me in
Potatoes,
jail.
of course.
Well, I mean, you're in Ireland, and there was the potato famine, so
Yeah.
I guess I could understand that.
So basically, no matter what you did, how small or how big, you were being tried and you were being locked in this jail.
Yeah, like they also exiled people to Australia. Like, I know that sounds like it would be a luxurious little retreat, but most of the time...
Have you seen those spiders?
That's a long way from Ireland.
Yeah,
to
That's
they-
really far.
And there's no, great direct route.
Water.
Yeah, it says that they never really made it there because of, starvation or mutiny. So, basically, if you were going to Australia... And when they sent you to Australia, you were just gone. You didn't say goodbye to your family, or anything. They just sent
You're going
you.
now on the boat.
Yeah.
See ya,
That's
and then
awful.
you're gonna die along the way. Cause
Yeah, so they...
You're not actually going to Australia. We're just putting you on a boat until you die.
Basically.
Yeah.
And it said that most people starved, they had heat exhaustion, there was disease and all of that other stuff. And then when the Great Famine happened, which we all know about, it says that 780 people were crammed into the jail's 77 cells,
Oh my god.
which was the highest number of prisoners ever recorded.
You're talking 10 people per cell. And back then, everything was smaller. You know that. Rooms, everything. Cells.
Yeah.
God.
Oh my god. And there's no way they could make sure everyone was properly fed.
Or
Well, during the famine, it said that people were purposely trying to get put into this jail because of the famine, and they couldn't eat. So in jail, they were feeding you better than you could be outside of jail.
Makes sense, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they eat each other eventually?
It didn't say anything about that kid.
When you're hungry, you're hungry.
I'm just
I'm sure
saying.
it probably happened, though,
I'm just
honestly.
saying, if you put that many starving people in the middle of a famine in a jail, you're gonna run out of food eventually.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, or not feed enough to satisfy
they're gonna
your
eat
hunger.
each other. Especially
But I mean, you're
many
you're
moons
putting
ago?
petty
Yeah.
crime with high criminals. You're just mixing people together. Over 10 people per cell. That's insane.
ridiculous.
But also,
And
it's kids and adults, too, right?
Yeah. It says that it included men, women, and children, and they were locked up in cells between 10 and 14 people and shackled to the floor.
Oh my
And then during the famine, it was 780 people in the 77 cells. Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. There's also a really cool story about, this rebellion and all that stuff, and the guy actually tried to rebel. They obviously lost, and he got killed. So that's a good one to look up. We don't need to talk about that. That'll probably take a little bit.
No wonder that's considered one of the most haunted places.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah, if you all die miserably like that, I'd come back
Yeah.
and haunt
that
everyone
many
too.
prisoners together. I mean,
Yeah.
I
And it
can't
says
imagine.
the youngest recorded was Thomas Pitt. He was an 8-year-old who was imprisoned and whipped for stealing 2 shillings from a woman's purse.
Wow.
Like I said, it said children were treated as harshly as adults. They were whipped, starved, and made to work a treadmill, which I know that treadmills are terrible in this day and age. But apparently this one, it was a torture device, and prisoners were made to work the treadmill for up to 5 hours a day. And it says children would struggle to keep up the pace with the adults, and they would fall and get trampled by other prisoners.
That's awful.
You know what I'm picturing? I'm picturing it not necessarily a treadmill, but more of like a hamster wheel kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of picturing.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
something where you go in a circle all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it said it was closed around 1924. The building basically fell to ruin, and during the 90s, it was restored because they liked the history about it. For some reason, I think it's a terrible place, but they opened it as a museum in 1998.
But it was open until when?
1924.
For a
Forever?
jail like that to be open until 1924?
Yeah, because it opened in 1702, closed in
Wow.
1924.
Like
That's a long time.
Yeah, a lot of old jails close earlier than that. That's open quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it's It's one of the big hotspots for like paranormal investigations. They do paranormal investigations. I know you said you don't like to do stuff with groups and stuff like that, but apparently there's like a lot of people that have been through here and have experienced a lot of stuff here.
A lot of places like that do those group investigations where you pay a fee and a whole group goes and one person guides you and you do a quote-unquote investigation. It's not an investigation. I kind of went on a rant about that last time.
They hit you with the jump scares and call it a day.
Yeah, it's not a true investigation. You can't do an investigation with 50 people on a freaking tour. But
well, that's true.
Because you've been on one with me.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. You need silence, and you can't do an investigation with 50 people who don't know what they're doing and without equipment. It just doesn't work.
But I have some information about like what people have said about it being haunted.
Yeah.
So obviously we know the jail has had a reputation of having tortured souls there and everything. But it says paranormal events reported were a green mist floating around the main floor, a man seen walking out of cell 19, a woman in a black velvet cloak seen walking on the ground floor, the sound of children crying, which makes perfect sense that would be there.
Creepy to hear.
And it says a man seen walking in front of the bars to a holding cell. And like the man, he has his hands behind his back, so it almost looks like he's like tied up or
he's
shackled.
Or something.
Yeah. So, and most of these events are witnessed by a bunch of people at the same time as well, which I always like when I see that.
Yes.
Seems more compelling.
Because it's not just one person randomly saw something. It's a whole group of people seeing the same exact thing.
Yeah, and the staff members all see things all the time.
Wow. I'm still in shock that it was open until 1924.
Yeah, so such a long time.
That's less than 100 years old. You guys realize that?
Yeah.
That's literally, it's close, but it's less than 100 years old. For a jail like that to be open.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's still a stone jail.
Yeah. They have a lot of pictures online, and they also have a lot of pictures of, not like reenactments, but like kind of waxy people, kind of like what Salem has.
Yeah.
And you can like kind of get the gist of what cells looked like and what the
That's
grid kind of looks like. It kind of reminds you of like a normal like penitentiary where there's like a row and you just see all the cells everywhere. They have a lot of cool pictures online. I definitely recommend looking it up.
Wow, that sounds like a really cool place.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you for that.
Awesome.
That's I didn't know that there was a jail that old that was open until less than 100 years ago.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I was surprised when I read stuff about it. That's why I kind of wanted to do this one after the first one. Cause
that's awful
tragic.
Conditions for people to be in.
Yeah, and it's during the famine, which is in our history books. Like we all know how terrible that time
like
was.
we said, you have small crime mixed with big crime. Like that's insane to put those
no
people
organization.
together. And,
yeah.
And everyone's shackled and everything else. That's awful. No wonder it's one of the most haunted places. That's crazy. Before we get into some more spooky tales of Ireland, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Ghost Encounters podcast is sponsored by the Eric Ledbetter team with Iron Valley Real Estate. Contact the Eric Ledbetter team for all your real estate needs. Visit theericledbetterteam.com. Also sponsored by Phoenix Fire Media. Bring the heat to your online presence with their digital marketing experts, professional photography, and video productions. Visit phoenixfiremedia.com. If you're enjoying Ghost Encounters podcast, hit subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Ghost Encounters PA. To watch full episodes of the Ghost Encounters show, visit ghost-encounters.com.
So Justin, you researched 2 places in Ireland. You want to talk about them?
Yes, I researched Loftus Hall and Lemonade Castle. Loftus Hall is a cool story because it's actually tied to the devil.
Oh no.
Ooh.
Here's the story of Loftus Hall. It was a large mansion located along the Hook Peninsula, and it goes back through the centuries. The original hall was built in 1350 by the Redmond family during the time of the Black Plague, and it was known as Redmond Hall. But during the English leader Oliver Cromwell's brutal conquest of the islands, in the 1650s, the hall was seized for English usage and was taken over by the wealthy Loftus family, and then it was known as Loftus Hall. In 1752, Charles Tottenham became Lord of the Manor. He had to adopt the Loftus name because he married into the Loftus family by marrying Anne Loftus. They had 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls, Elizabeth and Anne. However, his wife became ill and died while the girls were still young. 2 years later, Tottenham married his cousin Jane. According to the stories that defines Loftus Hall to this day, it was a dark Irish evening in 1775. The wind was howling, and cold rain poured from the thundering skies. Then came a mysterious rapping at the door. The Totten family of Loftus Hall didn't find this unusual because private shoreline was often used by sailors as a safe haven from stormy weather. They offered the man at the door shelter for several days. He befriended the host and took a particular liking to one of their daughters, Anne. And Anne became enchanted by this visitor. Shortly into the visit, the entire group played a game of cards. It was then that Anne dropped a card and saw something that changed her life forever. She leaned down to grab the card and realized that their guest didn't have human legs, but cloven hooves instead. Anne screamed in terror as the visitor vaulted straight upward through the ceiling and out of the house. A loud clap of thunder erupted right after the cloud of smoke appeared, leaving the family engulfed in the scent of sulfur. A hole was left that could never be repaired, and just like that, the mysterious figure was gone. But Anne never recovered from the incident. She went into seclusion in the tapestry room and died soon after. According to some, her spirit still wanders the halls. Jumping forward into the late 1860s and 1870s, the building underwent extensive renovations. It was then that an infant's remains were found hidden in the walls of the tapestry room. Anne had become pregnant and was concerned that she may be carrying the child of the devil. Once she gave birth, her parents murdered the infant and buried it in the walls of the tapestry room. A priest was called to perform an exorcism on the house shortly after. Loftus Hall has remained an architectural marvel. Through its stunning Georgian mansion on the coast of Ireland has long been revered for its beauty. It's also inspired terror for its chilling tales of ghosts. Since Loftus Hall was opened to the public in 2012, there have been reports from visitors who have claimed to seen and felt unexplainable things while in Loftus Hall. Since Loftus Hall was opened to the public in 2012, there have been reports from visitors who have claimed to seen and felt unexplainable things while in Loftus Hall. Do you have the courage to visit?
Nope.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't like anything that has... I'm not a very religious person, but when we talk about the devil and demons, that shit scares me. I get scared when we talk about the devil. I'm sorry.
That's an insane...
Call me bitch, whatever.
I'd go.
paranormal story tied to a house.
Yeah, and
It's
that
so pretty.
the hole is still open. Like they still cannot
they
close
still
it.
cannot repair it.
They can't.
It's so pretty though.
It's gorgeous. So the other place I researched was Lemonea Castle. On the edge of Burin in Ireland's County Clare lies the ruins of Lemonea Castle. It was a stronghold of the O'Brien clan. It was inherited sometime in the 1630s by Conor O'Brien. He and his wife Mary, or Red Mary, added various extensions and outbuildings until the castle became one of the grandest in the country. These extensive works were possible due to her considerable wealth, which she inherited after the death of her first husband, Daniel Nayland. She and Daniel had 3 sons, but after his passing, she married Connor and bore him several more children. Together, they made the castle into a truly magnificent residence. Mary was aptly named Red Mary, not just for her flaming red hair, but also for her foul temper, which was legendary. It is said that if a servant were foolish enough to displease her, they would be hung out of one of the castle windows, the men by their necks and the women by their hair. Ooh. If the maids did not learn to bend to her will, she would punish them by cutting off their breasts.
That's so
Awful.
rude.
She is
Come
evil.
on, Red
She
Mary.
is evil.
Leave the boobies
Best
alone.
asset. Come on.
Another story tells that she kept the stallion in her stables and would challenge visitors to ride it. Once the beast was released from its bridle, it would run wild, galloping towards the cliffs of Moher, where it would suddenly stop, hurling its poor victims over the cliff to their death. The word Lemonea even translates to horse's leap.
They were in cahoots.
Yeah.
Her and that horse. I'm just saying.
That sounds like.
In one of the battles that her husband Connor was in, he was severely wounded. As his soldiers brought him back to the castle, Mary is said to have shut the gates. It is recorded that she was far from showing sympathy. Mary shouted at them from the top of the tower, saying, "What do I do with dead men here?" She was cold-blooded.
She was cold-blooded.
she relentlessly nursed mortally wounded Condor until he died. But she realized that she might lose her home now, and so she was forced to go on the offensive. Red Mary offered to marry any one of his officers who would take her, and Captain John Cooper took her at her word. He was either brave or foolhardy. This marriage was not a good one, and it had its troubles. One morning, after Cooper made some comments about her former husband, Mary allegedly was furious, and she leapt out of bed and kicked him in the stomach, and he died.
From just a kick to the stomach?
Who knows what the heck she did or what wounds he had previously, but the story says she just kicked him in the stomach, and he died.
Well, she seemed pretty rough. So
She was a tough
She
chick.
kicked him hard.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. It's said that after John Cooper died, she went on to marry further 25 men.
What?
Each for just about a year and a day. Some stories say that she merely put each unwanted husband into a house with a servant and banned them from entering the grounds. But other stories tell that Red Mary killed each man once he outlived his usefulness.
I like her.
She's like a baddie.
She does seem like a baddie.
Now here's what happened to Mary though. She obviously crossed way too many people in her lifetime, and she finally met her demise when her enemies rounded and buried her alive in a hollowed out tree. Her red-haired ghost is said to still walk the floors of the castle. This castle should definitely be on your itinerary if you go to Ireland, because it said that about 50 ghosts are in attendance. And it's hardly surprising that Lemonea is said to be one of many haunted Irish castles. It's a bit in ruins now. It's not restored as some of these other places that we talked about are. It's kind of just in ruins. You can still see it, but people still see a red-haired lady walking around the grounds, and 50 other ghosts who could be her former husbands or servants that she hung out the
They
windows.
definitely have a good reason to haunt the place, so
Exactly.
I'd be pretty ticked off too.
To round this all about, I actually did some research on leprechauns since we were in Ireland, and I wanted to know, where did leprechauns come from?
Ireland.
Well, yes, but according to fables, leprechauns are tiny entities that normally take the form of an old man in a red or green coat. They are known to be mischievous little creatures that like to make shoes and store their gold coins in a pot of gold that is hidden at the end of a rainbow. If you happen to capture a leprechaun, he will give you 3 wishes, provided that you let him go. But leprechauns are not to be trusted, so you gotta be careful what you are doing and what you are wishing for. Most leprechaun legends can be traced back to the 8th century tales of water spirits, which are known as Letrapon, which means small body. It is said that these spirits merged with a household fairy and developed a penchant for heavy drinking, so no cellar was safe. I might as well be a leprechaun. Fairies actually come up a lot in Ireland.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, they do. The legend of fairies being in existence come up a lot, which I
I
thought
like
was
that no one's
pretty
ever
interesting.
agreed on how to spell fairies either. There's always like
Yeah.
4 different ways to spell
Right.
fairies, and
Yeah.
everyone's just like, they're all right. It's fine.
Same thing with leprechaun, though. According to other researchers, the term leprechaun actually comes from the Irish term lethborgan, which means shoemaker. Because remember, they make
Oh.
shoes.
All right.
That would
Yeah.
explain it.
But it's interesting to note that leprechauns are often associated with wealth, particularly gold, because they were cobblers, and shoemakers hardly made that kind of money. Nonetheless, the myth of the pot of gold persists, and there are still people who go looking for this hidden treasure. Though the legend of leprechauns is well over 1,000 years old, there was a sighting as recently as 1989 by a pub landlord called P.J. O'Hare in Carlingford County, Louth. O'Hare claims that he heard screams from a well and found the remains and clothing of a leprechaun, which is on display in his pub. So as early as 1989, apparently he has it on display, the remains and the clothing.
Just
from a
hanging out.
leprechaun.
I wonder if there's pictures.
It was like
gotta
an 89 leprechaun. You think he had like a flannel and some distressed jeans? Very on brand for 89.
That is all the time we have for today. Stay spooky.
May the cat eat you, and may the devil eat the cat.
Stay away from the lady in white.
And chase the rainbow.